So hello there. Today I'm going to talk about An Abundance of Katherines by John Green. You may know John Green as this author, and he's also kind of well known on this YouTube thing. Basically, I have this project here where I'm supposed to talk about certain aspects of the main character in this book, and that's what this is, so let's get going with it. Before I get into really the meat and grit of this video, this is a brief explanation of what the main plot of the book is by the wonderful Carrie Hope Fletcher in this clip.
About a boy called Colin Singleton who's somewhat of a child prodigy, but he only dates girls called Catherine. You know how some guys prefer blondes and some guys prefer girls with nose piercings? Well, Colin likes Katherines, it's just his type. And he's working on a theorem that could potentially predict the future of a relationship, like how long it will last, or who will be the dumper and who will be the dumpee.
So yeah, now on to the complex character of Colin Singleton. Colin is determined throughout this book to make his theorem work. And in the end, Catherine 3 doesn't really fit into his theorem. And after all of this anguish of, why won't you work? So he decides to call her up to ask her, what happened so that he can make sense of this anomaly. And this is when he finds out that he actually dumped her, not the other way around. But Colin was lost in thought. If Catherine 3 was who she claimed to be, and whom he remembered her to be, then what if? What if the formula was right? He called her again. Catherine Munzenberg, he said. Yes, it's Colin Singleton again. Oh, hi. This is the last question I'll ever ask you. That sounds completely crazy, but did I by chance break up with you? I did? Yeah. We were at a campfire sing-along, and you came over to me in front of all my friends and said you've never done this before, but you had to break up with me because you just didn't think that it was going to work long-term. That's what you said, long-term. God, I was devastated too. I thought you hung the moon. I'm really sorry. I'm sorry I broke up with you, Colin said. She laughed. Well, we were 10. I've dealt with it. Yeah, but still, I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. Well, thank you, Colin Singleton. No problem. Is there anything else, she asked? I think that's it. Okay. Well, care for yourself, she said, in a way that you might say to a schizophrenic homeless person for whom you've just given $1. You too, Catherine Munzenberg. Now, considering that throughout his whole life he thought that he's been dumped, only been the dumpy, he's never dumped anyone, it's kind of a big realization, and this realization forces him to reevaluate his mind. Colin had to figure out what had gone wrong inside his brain and fix it. He returned to the central question. How could he have completely forgotten dumping her? Or almost completely, because Colin had experienced a dim flash of recognition when Catherine told him the story of his dumping her in front of her friends, a feeling vaguely like when a word is on the tip of your tongue and then someone says it. It's at this point he's really starting to introspect, although he is kind of interrupted by a feral pig and some hornets and stuff. In all honesty, there is really not that much somatic development with Colin Singleton. Besides getting injured a few times, just once he fell and cut his head, and another time he was attacked by a wasp hive that he shot at, really nothing. The story takes place in the course of less than a summer. He doesn't go through puberty, he doesn't lose any limbs or anything, so yeah. Not much happens in this sphere of his life. Colin was labeled as a child prodigy from an early age. Literally. Colin's parents never considered him to be anything but normal until one June morning. 25-month-old Colin sat in his high chair, eating a breakfast of indeterminate vegetative origin while his father read the Chicago Tribune across their small kitchen table. Colin was skinny for his age, but tall, with tight brown curls that erupted from his head with an Einsteinian unpredictability. We did on west side, Colin said after swallowing a bit. No want more greenies, he added, referring to his food. What'd you say, bud? We dead on west side. I want french fries, please, thank you. Colin's dad flipped the paper around and stared at the large headline above the fold on the front page. This was Colin's first memory, his dad slowly lowering the paper and smiling at him. His dad's eyes were wide with surprise and pleasure, and his smile uncontainable. Cindy, the boy's reading the paper, he shouted. Since then, he has always been striving to become a genius. To matter, really. He is specifically good with linguistics and anagramming. And this is the identity that Colin has identified with for his whole life. That is basically until the end of the novel. It's then where he realizes he can create his own destiny, his own identity. So Colin drove past the Hardys and out into the interstate headed north. As the staggered lines rushed past him, he thought about the space between what we remember and what happened, the space between what we predict and what will happen. And in that space, Colin thought there was room enough to reinvent himself, room enough to make himself into something other than a prodigy, to remake his story better and different, room enough to be reborn again and again, a snake killer, an archduke, a slayer of TOCs, a genius even. There's room enough to be anyone except whom he'd already been. For if Colin had learned one thing from Gunshot, it's that you can't stop the future from coming. And for the first time in his life, he smiled thinking about the always coming infinite future stretching out before him. Colin doesn't really have much family interaction throughout the novel. I mean, they're there in the beginning when they're trying to console him from his recent breakup, which, by the way, they don't do a really good job with. Probably is a general parent thing, but especially his parents, not really the best. And after that, Colin calls them every day to check in with them, make sure he's not dead, but they really don't do anything to further the plot or to impact Colin's development. I guess that's kind of part of the point of this novel. Sometimes you need to step away from parents in order to grow as a person. Colin would never have had these experiences if he went on a family vacation with his parents. Community is kind of the theme in this book. And by kind of, I mean that it's a sub-theme rather than a main. I mean, Colin gets a job interviewing an entire community. And if that's not communal, then I don't know what is. Anyway, this job starts out as simply recording and collecting a local history from Gunshot's residents. However, after the truth comes out that the local factory is failing, the job's true purpose comes to life. To preserve the town's history, because it won't be like that forever. Wait, then why the heck did you hire them to do some little made-up job? Lindsay asked, nodding towards Colin and his son. If we're so broke, I mean, it's not made up. A generation from now, there might not be a factory, and I want your kids and their kids to know what it was like, what we were like. And I liked them. I thought they were good for you. The world ain't gonna stay like you imagine it, sweetheart. True words have never been spoke. I think this idea permeates to Colin, and is thus how he comes to his conclusion that he can change his future at the end of the novel. Nothing stays the same forever. Everything can change. So yeah, I highly recommend this book to anyone who wants to pick it up. Actually, I recommend any of John Green's books. I've read 3 of them. I've read this one, I've read Looking for Alaska, I've also read The Fault in Our Stars, which is being made into a movie, which you should see in June 14th, June 6th, one of those days. Anyways, that one's coming out in June, early June. You should see it. And yeah.